thus far we've talked about split file, we've talked about recoding, and we've showed you another function called select files. And of course you can use select file and split file for very similar reasons when you want to look at how different groups look at the same problem. But you can actually use the combination of split file and select cases to kind of cut up the data a little bit differently. So for instance, let's look at this question here of ex-marriage, which is a question about whether or not having sex with a person other than a spouse is wrong or not. And if we look to see how this is coded, you see it's a question about whether it's always wrong, almost always wrong, sometimes wrong, or not wrong at all. And this question is a basic deviance question to see how your attitude towards this issue. And let's see how men and women compare when they answer this question. So to do that, you just go to split file. I'm going to choose sex. Now I'm going to run my frequency. Now, of course, I've already dealt with the whole issue of missing cases. We've showed you how to do that before, so we're not going to do it again. Okay, so we've run this split file on this frequency, and we see for this question about whether or not sex with a person outside of a marriage is wrong or not, we see that 76% of males think it's always wrong compared to 82% of females, which think it's always wrong. And not wrong at all, we see that the percentages are pretty similar, but this issue of whether it's always wrong or almost always wrong, there's a little bit of variation between the genders. So that's using split file to look at groups. Let's say we're also interested in another dimension of this question. We know that males and females answer this question slightly different. But what about conservative males and conservative females? Do they answer this question differently than, let's say, liberal women and liberal men? To do that, we can combine split file and select cases to kind of cut up the data a little bit differently. So here I'm going to go now to select cases. And you could use select cases to select groups, but since we're going to go ahead and choose to use split file and select cases, I'm going to show you how to add those two kind of components together. So I'm going to do an if condition and click on that. Now I'm going to look at political views. And on the GSS, it's called political views. And political views is actually kind of a scaled question. So it's 1 through 5. How liberal are you? Is, if you're very liberal, you're a 1. You're somewhat of a liberal, you're a 2. You're a moderate liberal, you're a 3. And the same inverse is for if you're conservative. If you're a 5, you're somewhat of a conservative. 6, you're almost always a conservative. And 7, you're an extreme conservative. So let's look at this question in terms of if you are conservative. And to do that, we're going to choose political views that are ranked 5 or higher. So 5, 6, and 7 are included in this group. I click on continue and click OK. Now if I look at my data, you can actually see that SPSS has crossed out individuals who are liberal. So they're no longer in their analysis. So 41 here is a liberal person, whereas 42 is a conservative person. So they're kicked out of our analysis. We have that filter going, and we have the split file going as well. So if you run the same frequency, we have now this the percentages break down a little bit differently because this is just conservative individuals. Here we see that 80% of conservative males think that cheating on your wife is always wrong, whereas 90% of conservative women think that cheating on your husband is always wrong. As you can see, it's a little bit different than the overall population. They seem to be a little bit more conservative than the overall populations. So let's look now to see how these opinions might be different for liberal males and liberal females. And to do that, I just go to Data, go to my Select Cases, and now I'm just going to change my if command here. Select cases if, I'm just going to erase here, if political views are less than 3, less or equal to 3. So, as I said before, 1, 2, and 3 are liberal views, and so it's only selecting these individuals who marked themselves as liberals in this fashion. Clicking on Continue, click on OK, and you don't have to check, but now you can see that conservatives are X'd out and liberals are included in this analysis. Now if I run the same analysis again, you can see the percentages have changed. So we have 68% of males think that it's always wrong to cheat on your wife, and around 70% of females think it's always wrong to cheat on your husband. So interesting is that for liberals, males and females are kind of answering this question very similarly, whereas for conservatives, women tend to be a little bit more strict about whether or not you should cheat on your spouse. Also, so you can see here that conservatives are a little bit more strict about whether or not you can cheat on your wife or to what extent this is always wrong, whereas liberals tend to be pretty open, at least more accepting of people cheating on their significant others. And again, females and males are more closely aligned here. Now, if I'm going to do any other analysis, I would turn off the filter. Just go back to Select Cases, and I'm going to select All Cases. And then, you don't have to do this again, but you can see now that SPSS has selected all the cases. And you also might want to turn off your split file at this point. So if you go into Data, go to Split File, and now Analyze All Groups.